For the first 16 years of our marriage, I was an alcoholic. I was very selfish, very angry. And my wife prayed for 8 years for me to be sober, to change the person that I was. My name is Gabriel.
My name is Becky Sabal. We've been married for 21 years.
And this is my story.
I was the oldest of 5 children. I grew up in a pretty normal household. We weren't perfect, but for the most part we were happy. We played sports, we went on family vacations. My parents are still married today and been married for over 50 years. I remember going to church sometimes as a young kid with my parents, and then eventually they just started, I remember them putting me on the church bus so I could go with my sibling and my cousins by myself.
I come from a family of 3. It was me and 2 sisters. I was a middle child. When I was around 8 years old, my father, he left. He was an alcoholic, and and that's when, things got a little complicated, For my mom, it was a lot to take care of, 3 kids by herself, and some of the decisions that she made wasn't the greatest, but it was hard for her. I was sent to a couple of different places to live at an early age. And when I was around 10 years old, I was tricked to go to Mexico on vacation for a couple of weeks with my aunts. And we get there, and next thing you know, they're enrolling me in school. And I was, obviously I was angry, I was surprised, right? And I ended up going to school there. I ended up staying there for about 8 months until I tricked my grandfather on bringing me back, or having my uncle bring me back. And I arrived back to California. It was, my mom was very angry, And it was understandable, she had no idea I was coming back. And to be popped up on your doorstep, I understand now. And I ended up going back there, living for a couple more years, and then got sent away again, my uncles. And until finally when I did come back home, then that's when I started getting into trouble. And I started getting into trouble, started hanging around the rock crowd, started hanging around gangs, and just really didn't go to school. I think in junior high school, after the first time I ditched, after the second week, I think I missed almost a month straight. It was just, trying to rebel a little bit, I guess, or, finding comfort, outside. Whatever it was, it wasn't right. Time goes on, and my bad habits got bigger and bigger, and I got older. I never actually got into the gang, but that was my life, though. That everything was affiliated with them. I thought that drinking was fine. I thought drugs were fine. I thought, not going to school, because at the age of 15, pretty much I was out of school. Every school that I went to during high school, I got kicked out of for fighting. Someone would look at me wrong, someone would say something, and it'd be on, At the age of 15, my life was on a destructive path.
So in 1996, I met Gabriel. I was 22 and he was 19. We moved in together and we lived in sin for the next 3 years. In 1999, we got married. It was obviously a very unhealthy marriage. Gabriel was in his addiction, and there were times that weren't very nice. 3 years after we got married, we found out we couldn't have kids. I went into my own addiction of shopping, trying to fill a void that I know now only God could fill. I thought if I looked good on the outside, Nobody would see how broken I was on the inside. It was lonely. I didn't have anybody. My parents didn't understand the pain I was going through. Gabriel couldn't understand because he was going through his own pain. And we couldn't grieve that desire and that loss together. So it became an even more toxic and unhealthy relationship. We went through different levels of abuse, desperation, loneliness, pain. I was angry, I was hurt. I wanted to be a mother and I couldn't be.
It was hard, you know, in the beginning. I had a lot of problems with the alcohol and just, you know, being there with somebody that I had to answer to, you know. That was my pride, my arrogance. I always thought that, you know, for a long time that I was the man, that I was, you know, I wasn't gonna let a female tell me what to do. I'd go out, I'd leave her at home, you know. I would leave for days sometimes, just because I didn't want to come home, because I knew she was angry at me. I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't want to deal with the situation. I just run, and pretty much my running from everything that was going on was the alcohol and the drugs.
We fought quite often. I was at home hurting and lonely, and I wanted him to be at home with me, but he was in the streets hurting and lonely. We didn't know how to be healthy together. So when he would come home, no matter how bad I wanted him home, I would be angry with him. And I didn't know how to express myself to him. I didn't know how to express my hurt, my disappointment, and my anger towards him. So I became very passive aggressive, and he picked up on it, obviously. He knew me. It just caused more problems in the fights. Sometimes they got physical, not always, but there was always, you know, I did some plate throwing and he did some yelling, and, you know, his way was just, it's easier to walk out and not deal with it, which made the problems worse.
Yeah, during our marriage, it was, you know, there was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of running from me, and running because I didn't want to deal with our problems. It was easier for me to go and take off and drink and not come home and avoid everything that was going on, you know. And I never put her feelings, you know, I never put her feelings first. You know, I put my own. Coworker used to tell me all the time. He goes, "Hey, you're the problem. You're the problem." He used to tell me that for a while, you know, right? And so I started, you know, realizing that I am the problem. My alcoholism is the problem. I thought because I went to work every day, I had a good job, I had never missed work due to the drugs or alcohol. I was always at work, never missed at all. And I thought that seeing that I was able to do that everything was okay, that I had it handled, I had it under control. But in actuality, I was losing my family. And when the times that I would go home and I knew we were gonna fight, and I wouldn't care, right? She'd blow up and then I'd escalate it that much further. I would destroy stuff in the house. I would kick her out, and I throw all her stuff outside a couple times, right? I'd escalate it to where there's, you know, now it's embarrassing to even say it, but I would escalate it like there was no tomorrow, you know, that I wanted done with the marriage, I wanted done with her, and I just take it to new levels, and, you know, I'm not proud to say, but.
So after we would fight, I would always feel unimportant, unloved. Maybe if I looked different, he'd want to be home. Maybe if I would approve of everything he was doing, he'd want to be home. And one day, I was tired, and I called a divorce attorney, and I made an appointment, but I never showed up. And soon after that, I started coming to church, and I didn't have a Bible study I could go to. I didn't have connections in the church. I got to come to church and go home. And so I started reading 1 Corinthians chapter 7, which is the principles of marriage, and that's where I learned what being a Christian wife was, and that divorce, just because of my circumstances, wasn't acceptable to God. And at the end of 2006, I got saved and I gave my life to Him, and I continued to serve, and it wasn't easy. I would come and I would hear these amazing, life-changing messages, and then I would go home to chaos and turmoil, and I didn't go home to peace. And Gabriel would tell me, I'm never gonna be the Christian that you want me to be. He wanted me to leave. The more I wanted to serve, the more he wanted a divorce. He would put my stuff out on the lawn. I remember one time, everything I owned was on the lawn. And all I could do was worship as I picked up my stuff. And him and his friend actually sat down, I think, and watched me. And I got in my car and I came. It was a Wednesday night service. And I didn't let him see me cry. But I went to the altar and I broke. And I went home and slept in my car that night. But I made a determination that night not to give up on my husband.
When Becky started going to church, I just didn't feel that we needed to go to church, you know, because obviously I was in my addiction. Obviously I didn't want to stop, you know. I didn't want to admit that I had a problem. So when she would go to church, sometimes I'd find a reason just to make that the reason why we were fighting, right? Lots of times I'd pick any reason to fight. And yeah, and her going to church was something that she did every week, and that was just something for me to nitpick and to fight about. But at that time, I was just using the church just as an excuse to stop her from going, so I didn't have to stop what I was doing. The fights were bad sometimes. The fights were really bad, right? And I just had a bad habit of just taking to the limit, letting all my anger out and exploding. And the more I drank, the worse it got. And one time that I threw Becky's stuff out on the front lawn and changed the locks to the house, I wasn't even mad at her. I was angry at somebody else. Started, you know, taking it out on her because it wasn't, you know, she tried to calm the situation down, and I didn't want no calming of the situation. By her calming, it actually made me even more angrier. And, you know, and she didn't come home that night. I guess she slept in her car. I didn't even know about that. And then when she came home the next day, that's the day that I told her I was gonna stop drinking. And that's the day that I quit drinking. That was about 9 years ago. For the first year, I didn't go around anybody. I wasn't serving the Lord yet. I wasn't going to church or anything. I was trying to do everything on my own. I just basically secluded myself from everybody, every situation. Everybody that I used to hang around with, I didn't go around no more. And just like getting off of any other addiction, I was really unhappy. I was really moody. I was trying to do it all on my own. I battled with the addiction, the wanting to drink, the wanting to still get high at times, you know, right? And I lasted like that for about 4 years, trying to stay sober. And there were a couple times when I did fail. And I would go out and drink, nothing to the extent that I was doing before. And I can't be doing that, you know. And I didn't get angry, I would accept it, and and I'd stop drinking again. My thirst for the addiction finally went away about 5 years ago. When I gave my life to the Lord, it didn't go away right away, because I actually gave my life to the Lord about 6 years ago. And I was still fighting it. I was still fighting being submissive to the Lord. I was still fighting, giving up the control that I always used to have.
September, I believe it was 2013, I was at the altar worshiping. And I wasn't thinking about Gabriel, wasn't thinking about my circumstances at home. I was just lost in God's presence. And God spoke to me and he said, by this time next year, Gabriel's gonna be saved. So the months passed by, Gabriel didn't seem to be getting closer to God. His salvation didn't seem to be coming. Come July, he started coming to church with me. But then August comes and he's still not saved. September comes, and I had shared this story with only one person, my niece. She was sad and she was crying and she was telling me, Nina, what if there's not enough time for my Nino to get saved? What if God comes back and he's not saved? And I told her, I said, I'm gonna tell you a secret. God told me he's gonna be saved. And she stopped crying. So come September, I told God, I know if Gabriel doesn't get saved, it's because of his disobedience, not because you didn't keep a promise to me. But Lydia needs to see. She's little, God, and she needs to see you. She doesn't understand. And I started to get nervous, to be honest with you. He was in service with me one Sunday morning, right? Sunday. And I had my head down praying, and it was altar call. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder. And when I looked back, it was Sister Shelley. And she pointed at the altar. And I didn't even realize that Gabriel was there. But it felt normal. I remember not being in shock. I remember being happy. But I just remember God saying, I told you I was going to do it. And I did it. And I fought. And I decided to fast weekly for him and pray for him. And almost 8 years later, he joined me.
Everything that I did, it was based on what I thought and what I wanted to do. So for about the first year, I still fought it. So about 5 years ago is actually when my thirst for the alcohol was finally gone. I'm finally relieved of it, and I couldn't have done it by myself. And during that time, I was like, my son just came to move with us, started living with us. And I was reflecting back on times, that God got me out of stuff that it could have been a lot worse. And my mind was just racing through that time. Somebody was in some trouble, and I wanted to go help them, and it probably wouldn't have been good, So that's when I decided to give my life to the Lord. And through him, everything was resolved. His issues were resolved. And, and the peace, finally had peace. Slowly my outlook started changing on things, slowly started changing on the way I act. And one day, Pastor Isaac came, gave me a word. I remember sitting in the back of the church, and he actually looked for me from the front and came to me, and he goes, they had a word for me. And that he goes, that I had a lot of layers, right? And slowly they're gonna start coming down. But I have to pull each layer off in order to pretty much get rid of everything. I was still, battling a lot of stuff, and I didn't, I was like, whatever, to be honest, right? I was still fighting to keep control of what I thought was my life. But now I see that, slowly each layer has to come off of me in order to succeed, in order to be submissive, to move forward. for the Lord.
I was ready to put on my tennis shoes and run, and Gabriel was just finding his shoes. And it took a little bit longer. And I think it still was about 2 years before we got to get in a Bible study. And sometimes I would get frustrated. Like, come on, let's go. I'm ready to go, let's go. And God's like, wait. My timing. Let me do it in my timing. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that I had that time with God by myself, because I got to have the relationship with Him that I have today. I got to have a relationship with God on my own. I got to learn how to rely on God and nobody else. And now I get to watch the blessing that what God's doing in my marriage. And I'm just excited to see what He's gonna do next.
God saved our marriage. During those 8 years, she had to lend me some faith. She had to be my backbone to get me here, right? And I took advantage of it for a long time. And without God, I don't think we would have been married. We wouldn't be here talking. But the most important thing that I had to do, even though I came to church and you know, sat in the seat, the most important thing is to give in to the Lord, to be submissive, to remove that pride from your heart, remove that pride from whatever you're going through. That has to be removed from your life in order if you're gonna walk with the Lord and accept the Lord. You have to give Him full control.
So over the last 24 years, I've watched a very toxic, unhealthy relationship be transformed by the power of God. Not only has He healed our marriage, He's restored it, and He's given me my best friend. So I just want to encourage you, if you're serving God without your spouse, don't give up on them. Fight harder for them, because they're not just the husbands or the wives that hurt us. They're the lost sons and daughters of Christ, and that's supposed to be our first ministry, is to go out and save the lost. So fight for that husband, fight for that wife, but look at them as your brother or sister who's struggling, and fight harder. Don't give up on them.